Hey everyone, is Bitcoin about to crash or is it about to shoot for the moon? And is there any way of knowing? Let's talk about that. Okay, so over the last 48 hours, there's been a number of people that have weighed in on what they think is going to happen in the very near term. You've got the Jack Mallers, Mallers, with the Jack Mallers Show. He's the CEO and founder of Strike, Strike. So his podcast episode on Mailbag Monday, the Jack Mallers Show, which you can find on YouTube. I posted the YouTube link and I posted the podcast link a couple minutes ago. It's the same thing. It's just one's on YouTube, one's on podcast. He goes through why basically the federal government keeps telling people they're about to print a ton of money. And I agree with him. But on the flip side, so, that school of thought says, hey, a huge amount of money printing is about to start happening. And the federal government is telegraphing that every which way. And what matters most is how much Bitcoin you own before that massive mega print of money. Like, it matters a lot. But on the reverse side of things, my favorite analyst, my favorite analyst, which is James Check, who goes by Checkmate, is more cautious. He's like, hey, back in 2021, we had the sort of double top where it topped at $64,000 in April, and then it topped at $69,000 in November. And, there's a lot of similarities to the patterns Bitcoin is going through now as compared to that. And then you've got Saifedean Ammous, who wrote the Bitcoin Standard, basically saying, look, Bitcoin goes through these 4-year halving cycles, where, it tends to go through this parabolic run and then a major price correction. And then, it does it, and each high is higher and each low is higher. So it's always just going up and to the right, but it's with that volatility. And I posted that link as well. I posted all of these links. And Natalie Brunell, who's interviewing him, says, wait, but we're only at like 100 right now as I record this, 105,500, 105,500. So Natalie is saying, hey, Saifedean, but we haven't gone through this huge parabolic run. He was like, well, we still might. We might run up to $200,000 this year. But after we do, or if we do, there's going to be a significant price correction because the demand just can't keep up with that. So the question is, what is about to happen? And the answer is, I don't know. And neither does Jack Mallers, neither does Natalie Brunell, neither does Saifedean Ammous, neither does James Check. Nobody knows. Everybody is speculating what is going to happen. Now, what do you do in a situation like this when nobody knows what's about to happen? Nobody knows if there's going to be a price correction. Nobody knows if there's going to be a huge run. I can tell you what I do. I buy more Bitcoin. Why do I buy more Bitcoin? Because I only know with certainty that in the long run, Bitcoin will outperform everything. That's all I know. That's all I know with certainty is that it's going to outperform everything. And the only way I can act on that is by buying Bitcoin. So my most recent significant Bitcoin purchase was for $14,000, which I did a video about. $14,000 like a week or two back at a price of, I think it was $109,000. So we're technically $4,000 below the price I paid for $14,000. Would I make that purchase again if I could rewind time? Yes, of course I would. I want Bitcoin, not US dollars. If River, I bought it on River, if River sent me an email notice, which they have not, and I've never gotten one of these, but if they sent me an email notice saying, hey, somehow your purchase didn't actually go through, here's your $14,000 sitting in cash, what do you want to do with it? Again, that's never happened, but if it did, what would I do? I would immediately buy $14,000 of Bitcoin. So I am doing that because I am certain in the long term. I am not certain in the short term. Now, there's a couple of expenses coming up. One, I signed the contract for this $20,000 whole house generator because the power company cannot keep my electricity on to save their lives. It's absolutely crazy. So after the power just kept going out for the 12th time this year, I signed for a $20,000 generator. Now, notice I am buying $14,000 of Bitcoin and I will owe for a $20,000 generator. Like, that's going to happen. I'm going to have to pay for the $20,000 generator. That's going to happen. But I'm buying $14,000 of Bitcoin. So is there a possibility that by the time I owe the invoice, which is probably a month from now or something like that, by the time I owe that invoice for $20,000, which they have not billed me, they haven't invoiced me, so I'll pay it as soon as I get it, but I don't know when I'm going to get it. It could be a month from now. When I pay that invoice, let's call it a month from now, Bitcoin could be below the $109,000 price that I paid for it. Well, that's a risk you take every time you buy an asset. You either sit in US dollars knowing it will be worth less, but by a small amount, or you put it in Bitcoin where there's a good chance it'll be worth a lot more and some chance it'll be worth less. And that's the risk you take with every investment, and it's the risk I've taken with every single investment, all the time to the present. So wondering, well, wait, why don't you just wait? Why don't you just wait and see what happens and then decide? One second. Well, because if you wait, you miss out on whatever would have happened. So I had this exact conundrum back in 2022 and early 2023. Bitcoin was less than $17,000 per coin. Buy more Bitcoin at a price less than $17,000. At the time, back in late 2022 and early 2023, everyone thought that a recession was right around the corner. I mean, everybody. Everybody was talking like a recession was any day now. And I had to make the choice of, do I buy $17,000 Bitcoin? And I think it was 4 months. I think more than 4 months, Bitcoin was less than $20,000. From November, either late October, November, whatever, of 2022 to like sometime February, March. Anyway, it was like 4 months. 4 months, anyone in the world could buy an unlimited amount of Bitcoin at less than $20,000 with whatever capital they had available to them. But everybody was talking about a recession being right around the corner, and that if the recession did hit, that it would drag the price of Bitcoin down temporarily, therefore making people like me regret the fact that I had bought Bitcoin at 17,000 or 18 or 19 or whatever, less than 20,000. Obviously, I bought Bitcoin at less than 20. I bought it in the 30s. I bought it in the 40s. I bought it in the 50s. I bought it in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. And I think the highest I've bought Bitcoin for is 111,000. I don't know, something like that. So I made the decision back then that I am making right now, which is, I don't know if a recession's right around the corner back in 2022 and early 2023. I don't know if a Bitcoin price correction is right around the corner. What I do know is if I consistently invest in Bitcoin, that I have radically increased my net worth. As I've shared in other videos, my cost basis is maybe $30,000 or low $30,000, something like that. Which means I've more than, and because that's a cost basis on 100% of my liquid net worth, I've more than tripled my entire liquid net worth. Now, that does not include my stock in Prospero, which is not liquid, and other private company investments, but just for liquid assets, which is stocks, bonds, that sort of stuff, which I own zero. I have zero stocks, zero bonds, zero US dollar cash, other than very low, sort of barely scrape by, don't bounce a check to a babysitter levels of cash in my bank accounts. It's Bitcoin. It's all Bitcoin. It's 100% Bitcoin now. But I got to 100% Bitcoin with conviction of just always buying Bitcoin, always making decisions, including when Bitcoin was at $85,000 per coin, and I made the decision to finance my new 2026 model Tesla Model Y. The 2026 Tesla Model Y, I financed that with Trustmark at 6% interest for 5 years. And I was making a conscious decision that, hey, at a price of $85,000, I can liquidate Bitcoin and buy this Tesla, or I can finance this Tesla at 6% interest and keep the Bitcoin. And I decided to keep the Bitcoin at $85,000 a coin. Now it's $105,000 per coin, so the payments I'm making every month are significantly discounted because I'm paying for those Tesla payments with $105,000 Bitcoin instead of $85,000 Bitcoin, which was what would have been the case if I had liquidated the Bitcoin at the time I actually bought the Tesla. But again, and Bitcoin could dip below $85,000, and for a period of time, I could be paying payments on this Tesla that are below $85,000. But I don't know. And over the next 5 years, I think the vast majority, including potentially all the payments I make on this Tesla, will be above $85,000 per coin. So there's just no way of knowing what's going to happen in the near term. I am very thankful I did not wait for that recession back in late 2022 and early 2023. If I had waited for the recession to push the Bitcoin price lower than, between $16,000 and $20,000, I would have missed out on a bunch of Bitcoin that is now up 600%, which is the reason I can afford a Tesla. So I can afford a Tesla now because I had the conviction to buy Bitcoin below $20,000. Obviously, I bought it at all prices, but, in total, it resulted in a cost basis in the low $30,000. That includes Bitcoin I bought as low as $6,400. It includes Bitcoin as high as $111,000. But the cost basis in total is a low 30,000s because I had the conviction to buy back when everyone was holding. So we find ourselves in that same situation now, which is, should you buy more Bitcoin now or listen to Safety and Amos or, be cautious like Checkmate, whatever. And Checkmate's not saying don't buy Bitcoin. He's just saying, hey, you better be ready for the volatility. Same with Safety and Amos. He's not saying don't buy Bitcoin. He's saying if you're buying Bitcoin now, you got to be ready for the swings. You got to be ready to take a significant drawdown. You got to be willing to ride that out. You've got to have finances that can handle that. That is what he's saying. If you can't handle that, don't take the risk if you can't handle it. Like, you got to be able to handle that. Make sure you can handle it. So that's where we are. Nobody knows the right answer. Nobody knows what's about to happen next. What I know in the long term is the U.S. government's going to print a freaking boatload of money. They're going to, out of thin air. And there will be high inflation that will run for an extended period of time. That is absolutely positively the only way out of the debt, the mammoth debt, insanity that we're in. They're going to print a ton of money. I want to own as much Bitcoin as conceivably possible before the big print. That's what I want. My finances can handle it. My finances can handle buying Bitcoin, $14,000 of Bitcoin at $109,000 and liquidating it at $92,000 to pay for a whole house generator. My finances can handle that. My finances can handle making payments on a Tesla for a period of time when Bitcoin is below $85,000 per coin. If that happens, my finances can handle it. And if every decision I made was not buying Bitcoin with money that I might need in the next year or two, then I would buy way less Bitcoin. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit on money. I'm not going to sit on 1 or 2 years of reserves just in case Bitcoin crashes. I'm going to make sure I have enough of a cushion to be able to handle it, to be able to spend Bitcoin when it's down if I have to for a period of time. But I'm going to have enough Bitcoin that I can ride that out, and I'm going to be good on the other side. And that's all I know to do. That's the only thing that's worked for me, and that's the only thing that works in investing. Because again, if you always kept, if you never bought Bitcoin unless you knew it would be up, then you would only ever buy Bitcoin with money that you didn't need for at least 4 years, which would mean there was a significant amount of money that I had back in 2022 and 2023 that I would not have bought Bitcoin because I would have thought, well, I'm going to need some of that money before 2026. Well, it turned out to be a great idea to buy a bunch of Bitcoin back then. Buy Bitcoin back then. When I say a lot of Bitcoin, I'm not talking about units of Bitcoin. I'm talking like Bitcoin as a thing. So for you, a lot of Bitcoin may be 0.1 Bitcoin. For me, a lot of Bitcoin may be more than 0.1 Bitcoin. But, when I say a lot of Bitcoin, I'm not talking in discrete units. I'm talking in sort of amounts of Bitcoin. So anyway, that's all I know to do. What I know to do is to focus on the long term, make sure my finances can handle volatility, make sure that if Bitcoin dips in the near term, that if you're in a situation where you absolutely cannot handle a dip in the price of Bitcoin, then you're stuck having some reserves, which sucks. I mean, it absolutely sucks to have US dollar reserves to handle a dip. But if you're in that situation, it is what it is. You've got to do what's best for you. I'm in the situation where I have enough Bitcoin that I can ride out a dip, and I'm fine with that. And you know what? I'm going to end up spending some Bitcoin when it's lower than the price I paid for it. And you know what? With my paycheck every 2 weeks, I'm going to end up buying Bitcoin at that price too. And at that price, when I'm spending that Bitcoin, the newly bought Bitcoin I'm buying at a price that's significantly higher than the price I paid for it in the future, well, it'll all work out in the wash and I'll end up being substantially up. That's the way it works in the long term. So, obviously, this is not financial advice. Nothing I ever post is financial advice, legal advice, tax advice, accounting advice. None of it's any of professional advice. It's just my random opinions of what's worked for me. And if I had US dollars right now, I would buy Bitcoin. For the Bitcoin I do have right now, I'm not liquidating it. I'm not even liquidating the Bitcoin I know I'm going to need 1 month from now to pay off this whole house generator for $20,000. I'm not even liquidating Bitcoin for that because my finances can handle a dip. And if it does dip and I bought $14,000 of Bitcoin at 109 and I liquidate Bitcoin at, 85 to pay for a whole house generator, so what? I take a loss one time on top of a bunch of gains. I mean, if you win 80% of the time and you lose 20% of the time, keep playing that game. So the reason gambling is a bad idea, the reason casinos are a bad idea, the reason speculating in the stock market's a bad idea, the reason day trading is a bad idea is because you lose more than you win. And when you lose more than you win, you lose in the long term. It's a loser's game. It's a fool's game, which is why I don't do any of those things. If you invest in Bitcoin, it doesn't mean you win 100% of the time. It just means you win the majority of the time. And anytime you are investing involves winning the majority of the time, then you end up really well off in the long term, as long as you don't get wiped out at some point in that process. So obviously don't put yourself in a position where you're going to get wiped out by one big downturn, which is why I don't recommend people buy Bitcoin with leverage, meaning with borrowed money. If you buy Bitcoin with borrowed money, especially if you borrow against your Bitcoin to buy Bitcoin with borrowed money against your Bitcoin, then when your Bitcoin drops, you get a margin call. And a margin call is like the worst thing ever. A margin call means if you can't post more collateral, meaning give them more Bitcoin, your position gets liquidated and you lose your Bitcoin. So, and I've known people that have done that. So don't borrow against a mark-to-market asset. Don't borrow against bonds. Don't borrow against stocks. And don't borrow against Bitcoin, because all of those can get margin called. Now, you're not in the same position if you've got a home equity line of credit, or you've got a mortgage on your house, or in my case, you've got a 5-year mortgage, or not a mortgage, a 5-year car note on a Tesla. You're not in that position. The bank's never going to, Trustmark Bank is never going to come to me and say, hey, your Tesla's, got a few scratches on it. It's not worth what it used to be. You got to post more collateral. Banks don't do that. They don't do that for houses. They don't do that for cars. They loan you money and you owe it in 5 years. But if you can't afford to make the payments on your house, or you can't afford to make the payments on your car, and you risk losing it, and you have to liquidate Bitcoin when it's down to keep from losing your house, that's the sort of situation where you can lose a lot of Bitcoin at a price you don't want to part with it for. So make sure you can handle that volatility. I can handle the volatility in my life, which is why I'm 100% Bitcoin, and I can handle the volatility that comes with being 100% Bitcoin. And part of that is because I have a paycheck. I'm president of Prospera. I get a paycheck every 2 weeks. That, it doesn't cover all my expenses, but it covers most of them. And the rest of it, if I have to pay for the rest of my expenses with Bitcoin that's volatile, including down sometimes for the price I paid for it, that's fine, because in the long term, it's up a lot more than it's down. And so if I can ride that out, I'm good in the long term. And I am. So, and I can. But I don't want anybody in a situation where Bitcoin where they ended up worse off because of Bitcoin. And the only way that happens is if you're forced to liquidate Bitcoin when you're down. And please don't put yourself in a situation but where you're forced to liquidate Bitcoin when it's down because you can't make a mortgage payment, or you lose your job, or you can't make a car payment, or you borrowed against your Bitcoin, or you borrowed against your stock portfolio, or anything like that. Just make sure you can service debt, you can make payments, you're not overextended, you're not out over your skis. Just don't get yourself in trouble, and Bitcoin will continue in the long run to be the best asset that's ever existed. I am certain of that. You just got to be able to handle that volatility in the short term, which is why I did a video back up at 111,000 Bitcoin saying, hey, we're at a record up here at 111. Not a soul in the world is down on their Bitcoin. 100% of Bitcoin holders are up. If you can't handle the volatility, take some chips off the table. Get where you can. Now, there's obviously a few people who have bought Bitcoin at above 105,500, which is where it is right now, including me, because back when I did the video at 111,000, it was a record, literally a record while I was recording the video, which means not a soul in the world had bought Bitcoin for more than the current price, because it was literally setting records as I was recording the video. So it was impossible to have bought Bitcoin in the past at a price higher than the current price, because literally it had never been higher than that price. So in that video back at 111,000, I said, if you cannot handle the volatility, you can get off the train. So I'll say the same thing here. Not that nobody's bought above 105,500, but the vast majority of people, the Bitcoin they hold, they bought at less than 105,500, or the cost basis of all their Bitcoin, meaning the combined price of all the Bitcoin, is below 105,500. So if you cannot handle the volatility, please adjust accordingly. please only hold the amount of Bitcoin that you can handle and that you're not going to get forced to liquidate, in a downturn. It happens, and I just don't want it to happen to anybody. So anyway, what would I do if I had more money, US dollars, to buy Bitcoin? I would buy more Bitcoin right now because I can handle that volatility. I've been through it before. I've been through the downturn after 2017. I've been through the downturn after 2021. I can make it through the downturn of 2026 if they're, 2025, I should say 2025. Again, the 4-year cycle tends to involve peaks in 2013, 17, 21, and possibly 25. Although historically, the highest of those peaks has always been late in the year, not early in the year. Now, again, according to Saifedean Ammous, the launch of the Bitcoin ETFs may have moved that up. But Natalie Brunell makes a really good point of, but we have not had a blow-off top. A blow-off top is this parabolic rise followed by a crash. We haven't had that parabolic rise. The march up to $112,000 Bitcoin has been a pretty steady, solid, measured march. It hasn't been these insane rises like you saw in 2013, 2017, and 2021. And the reason you get that big price correction is because you get this insane, unsustainable rise, and there's just not enough demand to keep that going. And then at some point, the price drops back to something that the demand can actually sustain, which is what happened after 2013, 2017, and 2021. The price drops back to a price level that the demand can sustain, and then it keeps marching forward. But again, you don't want to be somebody who bought in a radical upswing that was unsustainable, and then when the price drops back to a price that the demand can sustain, you're stuck liquidating your Bitcoin at a price lower than you paid for it. I just don't want anybody to be in that situation. So stay safe out there. Make sure you can handle volatility. Make sure you can handle downturns. I still think, again, in my case, I buy more Bitcoin any chance I get. With every paycheck every 2 weeks, every opportunity I get, if there's US dollars, I buy more Bitcoin. That's just what I always do. And it works great for me, but I can handle the volatility. Make sure you can as well. So over the coming days, weeks, and months, we will find out, is the sort of cautious pessimism of Saifedean Ammous warranted? Do we get a rise to $200,000 followed by a significant crash? And look, if it goes to 200,000 and it crashes 50%, we're still at 100,000, which is barely lower than now. Although he says we could crash more than that. Nobody knows. Literally nobody knows. Not a soul on the planet even knows. Or do we get, the big print that the book called The Big Print that just came out by Larry Lepard, or Larry Lawrence Lepard, however you say it, The Big Print, those 3 words, The Big Print. The book just came out earlier this year. Do we get the big print that Larry Lepard is talking about and that Jack Mallers is talking about and that I think is going to happen? Do we get that? And do we get a huge sustained rise in the price of Bitcoin that lasts for a long time? And everybody on the planet is talking about whether you bought a bunch of Bitcoin before it or after it. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Just make sure you can handle all scenarios. And the best way to make sure you can handle is buying Bitcoin with retirement funds. Because if you're buying Bitcoin with retirement funds, as long as you're not planning to retire in the next 3 or 4 years, so if you're under the age of 60 and you're buying Bitcoin with retirement funds, you're golden. You're golden because you're going to be retiring more than 4 years from now. And there has never been a time that over any 4-year time span in the entire history of Bitcoin that has been down. So I think the probability that Bitcoin's higher than today's price 4 years from now is 100%. On a 3-year basis, Bitcoin has historically been up 97% of the time. So if somebody said, 100% of probability Bitcoin's up from today's price 4 years from now. I get it. What about 3 years? I would say 97% of the time. Why? Because 97% of the time over the last 16 years, Bitcoin's been up over any 3-year time period. If somebody said, but what about only 2 years from now? I would say 67%. Why 67%? Why? Because over any 2-year period over the last 16 years, there's a 67% chance Bitcoin's up. And if you're patient by 1 more year, your probability of being up jumps from 67% to 97%. And if you're even more patient, it goes to 100%. That's the way Bitcoin works. So please be patient and please don't invest money in Bitcoin that you cannot afford to lose and that you cannot afford to just ride out and wait. Or if you're right up onto retirement, you're like right there, make sure you have the ability to work to figure out which way Bitcoin's going before you're all in like me. So I've still got a paycheck, so I can handle it either way. hopefully this video helps. Nobody knows the future. Make sure you can handle the ups and downs. There could be a significant price correction around the corner. Nobody knows. There could be a massive price rise right around the corner. Nobody knows. Make sure you can handle anything. Just please make sure you don't end up in a situation where you're forced to liquidate Bitcoin at a price lower than you paid for it in significant amounts. I don't care if I have to liquidate a little bit of the Bitcoin I paid, pay for it at 109, liquidate it at 105, buy Bitcoin at 105, I have to liquidate it at 92. I don't care, but I don't want to have to do that with like all my Bitcoin. And so if you've got a lot of your Bitcoin with a cost basis that's up in the, 100,000 plus, 90,000 plus, and that's like most of the Bitcoin you've ever bought, make sure you can handle the downturns. Just make sure you can handle it, because there could be one around the corner. We could also be in for a huge price rise. Nobody on the planet knows, not a soul. So good luck out there. I'm here for anything you need. Feel free to message me anytime on Facebook Messenger. I love responding to people's questions, and I will continue to try to be the best possible Sherpa on the way up the Bitcoin mountain, including the valleys. Remember, Bitcoin goes up and down on its way up. So I said up twice, I said down once. So that means it goes up more than it goes down, which is why it's the best performing asset in the world over the last 10 years, best performing over the last 5 years, certainly best performing over the entire life of Bitcoin. But there are ups and downs on the way up. Make sure to get the two ups, you can handle the down in between. And nobody knows when that down's coming, but make sure you can handle it.